Yeah. Since 2019, we've been building mindset and purpose for real estate agents, entrepreneurs, leaders, people becoming more than they were yesterday.
Monday through Friday we rise. We win the morning, we win the mind. Faith over fear, pressure into purpose. Confidence built through the work. Something good is gonna happen to me. Something good is gonna happen to me. I don't need all the answers, I just need belief. Becoming who I'm called to be. Making impact bigger than me. God first, doubt steps back. When it gets heavy, we figure it out. You're not here by accident, you're part of the story. Stepping strong, stepping faith. Let's get your mindset right.
Good morning, everybody. How we doing? Can you all hear me today? There
Oh
we
yeah,
go.
you sound great.
All right, I am fired up today. Happy Friday, everybody. Figure it out Friday. I hope everybody's had a wonderful week. I want to kick today off with a little reminder to focus on those micro miracle moments. Focus on the little things. You survive the week. Maybe you're working on a big project. Maybe you are waiting on a deal to go through. Maybe you've got a big weekend in business. Maybe you're doing some family stuff. Maybe today is a beautiful day to reach out to a friend you haven't talked to in a while. Send them some love. Let them know you care about them. I'm excited today. You know, we've got an amazing guest here on Figure It Out Friday. Josh Hull is in the house. J. Allen Hull. And one of the coolest things about Josh is, man, he is so dialed in to focusing on people, helping others. You know, he's the coach's coach, right? So what that means is, you know, Josh has worked with all types of people to enhance what they're building, how they're impacting people. He's done a lot of work with Dean Graziosi, Tony Robbins, Don Miller with Story Brand. You know, Josh is a very well-rounded human. He's been through a lot in life. He's extremely intelligent. He's working on putting out a book. He's built courses. He's spoken on stages. I actually had the opportunity to speak with him a couple weeks ago at a conference called The Thing, and he absolutely crushed it. So much so, and Josh, you'll get a kick out of this. He had me tearing up, crying in the back row as I watched his speech. He's so authentic. He's so real. He's so vulnerable. And I'm just so elated to have him on today's show because he's going to share some situations, some scenarios where he had to figure it out, folks. It's Figure It Out Friday. And, you know, he's gonna teach us some lessons from that. You know, he's got a beautiful family, building a business. And I'm just so excited. So please, everybody put a 10 in the chat if you're excited as much as I am to welcome J. Allen Hull to the show.
Hey Jim, thank you so much for having me here today. So much for being a part of this. I'm excited. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. Absolutely appreciate that. For you guys that are wondering why Jim's going back and forth between Jay Allen Hall and Josh, Everybody calls me Josh. All my friends call me Josh. You're now my friends. You guys can call me Josh. But I go by J. Allen Hull professionally because nobody wants advice from a guy named Josh A. Hull. So Jim knows that. He's heard me say that before. But I am excited to be here. I am stoked out of my mind. So thank you so much, Jim, for that beautiful introduction. Appreciate that.
So, Josh, I'm going to call you Josh. Uh,
Yes.
Tell us about a time in your life, man, where it was complex. You had a lot of things going on. You had to figure it out. A time maybe where, as you were leading up to that, you didn't maybe have all the answers. Maybe there was a lot of pressure. A lot of people on the call today are building businesses. They're entrepreneurs. They're real estate agents, right? There's economic changes. There's always selling and doing sales, and I know that's a big piece of what you teach and what you focus on. But bring us to a time where you really had to figure it out, and then you know bring us through that. Give us some lessons of what you learned and maybe how you continue to use those lessons today and in all your success.
Awesome. Yeah, Jim, I appreciate that opportunity. So, you've heard some of this story, but I'm going to take everybody back to 2008. I graduated the police academy the week after that. So I graduated on a Friday. The Friday after that, I married my beautiful wife, Mindy. 3 days later, I was back on duty doing the field training and all of that. And as I was a couple of months into this, as I was taking a suspect down, I was kneed in the groin. And so, of course, they made me go to the hospital, workers' comp, and they saw something and they made me come back. And it turned out that I had testicular cancer. But it was so new, it was so fresh that it was just a simple operation. The doctor said, "Look, I have trouble even calling it stage one." I mean, literally a miracle. I'm a Christian, I'm a man of faith, and that was just God looking out for me right there. So no problems there. But what it did lead to was low testosterone. So let's fast forward a couple of years. Low testosterone. I'm on the police force. I'm working out every day. I'm eating right because I got to stay fit to be out on the streets and but just not feeling well and feeling worse on this testosterone replacement therapy. Finally come to find out that on every medication, right? Every commercial, it's like, hey, you could experience this and this, but hey, it's a 1 in a million chance type of a thing. Well, I was lucky, Mr. 1 million. And at the age of 30, I suffered a heart attack. I lost 40% of my kidney function. And that was all on top of the type 1 diabetes that I've had since I was 11 years old. So at that point, my doctor said, "You're never going to work again." So we started applying for disability. We lost 55% of our income overnight. My wife and I had our oldest daughter at that time. We didn't have any other children, but she was working for Child and Family Services, seeing atrocious things happen to women and children on a daily basis, plus having to come home, maintain a home with a sick husband, and we wound up going through this and really struggling financially. We lost four babies during that time because of the stress that my wife was under, and during that process, I was also diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease. But I'll tell you the moment when I hit rock bottom mentally. This is the part of the story. You guys are getting the part of the story that I usually don't even tell from stage. Jim hasn't even heard this. I went through the disability process. We went through all the way denial, 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 because that's what the government does. We got in front of the judge, and this is the final appeal, basically. And this is where usually most people get approved. But my attorney says, "Hey, man, we're going to go in there. There might be some question as to, well, you can't be a cop, but could you do a call center or something like that?" It's like, "I'll handle all that. Don't worry." So we go in. It's my attorney. It's me. It's the judge in front of us. On this side of me is the medical expert, and on this side of me is the vocational expert. That's it. They didn't even let my wife in. And as we're sitting there, the judge starts out, and then she asks me, "Mr. Hull, tell me about your day and how these things affect you." So I'm telling her, I'm describing how these things affect me, plus the side effect of the medications that I'm on for these things. And she says, "Okay," and lets me kind of tell about it. And then she asks the medical expert. She says, "Is there anything you'd like to add?" Now, my attorney explained to me, this is basically her saying, is there anything you'd like to refute? You know, is he exaggerating anything? Is he lying about anything? Is there anything in the medical records that you have? Because this was all based on just what my doctors were saying. Is there anything that you would say, well, Mr. Hull is not being entirely honest about? I'm an honest guy. So the guy says, nope, nothing that I need to add, Your Honor. I wasn't worried about that part. The part we were concerned about was the vocational expert. And so then she turns to the vocational expert. She starts asking a series of questions. And essentially, it comes down, after this series of questions, it comes down to this question. Is there anything in the United States database that Mr. Hull could do given his conditions? And the expert types a little bit, and then she looks up and she says, there is nothing in the United States database of employment that Mr. Hull would be qualified to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That, Jim, that was the moment when like my soul left my body. Like at that point, I felt so useless. So the judge says to my attorney, is there anything you'd like to add? And he literally said, he held up his hands and he says, not without muddying the water, Your Honor. And she ends it. We walk out. He's skipping down the hallway. I mean, he's like, he tells me, he says, man, in 11 years of practicing disability law, I have never seen that. I've never seen basically the witnesses for the prosecution come to the defense of the defendant. I mean, that's really what happened there. And he's
So he
excited.
so he he's having a he's pumped you won the case.
Yeah.
He's fired up that, he did his justice, but what that ultimately resulted in was someone determining the fate of your future and your employment,
Exactly.
which is
Exactly. And
not the best feeling on your end.
no, it's not. It's not. And you know, they don't tell you right there in the hearing, you got to wait 6 months. And but he's like, you're going to get approved. So he's excited. My wife feels relieved because again, now we're going to get, I mean, it's not a lot. It's like a third of what I was making, but any little bit helps the household, takes a little pressure off of her. So we lived 2 hours away from the federal courthouse in Salt Lake City. I lived in the middle of Utah, little rural town. And on the way home, my wife's driving, and I'm just literally looking out at the fields passing by, thinking, "You're completely useless." And I'll tell you, I wasn't suicidal, but I'll tell you, Jim, in that moment, I wished with all my heart that the heart attack I had would have killed me.
Yeah.
And the reason why was because at the time I had $1 million worth of life insurance on me, and I could have been that could have gone to my family. In fact, had I actually been shot in the line of duty, this was all through work. And had I been shot in the line of duty, then they would have gotten an extra 500,000. So they would have gotten 1.5 million had I died in the line of duty. And I wished with all my heart. But at that point I wasn't suicidal because it was like, well, there's no point. I actually have to stay alive now just to collect this little paltry check. That was it. That was all I existed for.
It's
So
interesting to hear, you know, this side of the story because Josh, seeing what you're doing today and how you've rebuilt and utilizing the opportunity to impact others and how you function at such a high capacity, and cognitively, like you're a very intelligent man. You've been on stages with Dean and Tony and Don Miller and like how did you get to the other side of this? Like what happened next? You know?
that, so that's a great question. So obviously we went several years, well, a couple of years where basically I woke up every morning saying, there is nothing I can do to retire my wife. There's nothing I can do to support my family. There's nothing I can do. And by the way, when my wife and I got married, she's like, my dream is to stay home and raise the kids. And that was my dream, was to give her that dream, and now it was all gone. One day, I don't know, it was by the sheer grace of God that I woke up one morning and I changed one word. Instead of saying there's nothing I can do, I said, there is something I can do. And I thought, there's got to be something I can do, right?
Let's go. Let's
Right.
go. Throw a
And
10 in the chat if there's something you can do.
there is
Let's
something
go.
you can do. And I said, there, people are making millions of dollars online, never leaving their house. There's got to be something I can do. And here's the thing, Jim, like when you're thinking about buying, like, say, a red Corvette, all of a sudden, all you see are red Corvettes everywhere.
Yep.
that one word, there's something I can do. It shifted me in a way that the very next day I saw a post on Facebook. Someone said, "Hey, I'm looking for freight brokering agents. I'm opening a freight brokerage," which is basically the middleman between the company and the truck driver, and then you get a little commission on top. And and he lived right down the road from me. So I literally, I called him up and said, "Hey, Kirk, could I do this from bed?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, all you need is a phone, a cell phone, internet, and a laptop, and you're good to go." And I was like, "Great, show me how to do it." So he came in and he showed me how to do it. And immediately things took off for me, and I helped him scale his business to six figures. Um, I started reading books, business books. I started reading mindset books because I recognized the first step that changed in my life was my mindset. I came across Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which is the whole reason why my company is called the Purpose Driven Co. And my marketing company is called the Purpose Driven Messaging. And so I started there and then moved into, the idea of, okay, my mindset is good. I wake up in the morning, and I'll tell you guys the tools in a minute. I'll give you the tools because I'm not going to leave you hanging of what I created and what happened. But then I got to I just want to give you the whole story arc, and then we'll come back to what I really want to talk about today. Then I got to, well, I can't just block out my planner. I still had health issues, right? And even though my mindset was improving, which did improve the way I felt, there were days where my kidneys were just having a bad day and energy was out the door. So then I started studying, well, I got to work within my natural biorhythms. I got to be really cognizant of that. And at this point, I'd left his company. I started my own freight brokering business, scaled that to six figures, sold it, scaled a financial services business to seven figures, sold that, and I entered the coaching industry. So along the way, prior to entering the coaching industry, I'm figuring out these things. Okay, I got to work within my energy levels. Productivity starts with where your mind's at. Productivity then goes to how do you feel today? And how do we work within the biorhythms? And then we add in the time blocking. That's what most systems miss is they just start with time blocking and just grit your teeth and bear it. I couldn't do that. So I retired my wife, obviously. We wound up having, after losing four babies, we wound up having four more beautiful girls right in a row. So we've got a 15-year-old, and now we've got a 10, 9, 8, and 7-year-old. So we were definitely blessed. Even my English bulldog is a female. So I'm like 5 minutes away from growing a uterus in my house here. Um, we had a hamster, and it was a female. Anyways, so that then led me to building a profitable coaching business because I saw people out there, I call it the twin win. People were sacrificing their family for the success financially. And I believe you can have both, that you can succeed in business while winning at home. One of my core values is that no worldly success can compensate for failure in the home. So all of that to say that I wound up in the coaching industry. I got hooked up with Dean Graziosi on his stage, became good friends with him. In fact, was just texting him earlier this week, was like, "Hey man, I'm going to be telling that story again." And he's like, "Good luck." Tony Robbins wound up on stage with him, Russell Brunson, Brendan Richard, now most recently Don Miller. He's coming to my girl's birthday party in a couple of weeks with his daughter. We're good friends. And these are all people that I wrote down at one point that I wanted to be friends with. And so that's where I want to back up to, if you're okay with that, Jim.
Yeah, yeah. I love the you wrote it down piece. I think getting it out of your head and making it a reality on paper is extremely important. And then continuing to, put that into your mind and to navigate new ways to do it. It's huge. It's
Yeah,
huge. You got to make the
absolutely.
decision.
Absolutely. So when I realized that it was my mindset that shifted and I started to look into that, one of the things that I realized with that was I needed to create a life map. You don't drift into success. You drive into it. So I took some pieces from Viktor Frankl, some things I'd read from Donald Miller, from his Hero on a Mission book, some things I read from Stephen Covey. And what I realized was the first thing I need to do was I need to write a purpose statement, which is basically the eulogy exercise of who you wanted to become. I needed to write a 10, a 5, and a 1 year vision, which is like a present tense vision. You write it as though it's already happened, and then create my goals and work through that. And so that's really what I wanted to share with you guys today is, and Jim's heard me talk about the purpose statement. And the way it works is there's five key domains. There's your spiritual domain, your familial domain or family, your social domain, your physical domain, which includes your mind and your body, because you're an integrated being. One affects the other. I learned that when my mindset got better, my energy went up. When my mindset got worse, my energy went down. And then the final one is your financial. Most people do it in reverse. They start with their financial, and then maybe they'll focus on the physical. I want my body to look sexy, right? And then they'll maybe throw something in there with their family. But if you start with spiritual, you move to family, and I'm not talking religion, I'm just talking your connection to other beings, your connection as a spiritual being on this planet. If you want to put it in terms of faith and religion, I put it in terms of Christianity for me. But that's where you start, then your family, then your social. What community do you want to create? What community do you want to be a part of? This is where I literally wrote down, I want to be friends with, and then I wrote down Dean's name, Russell's name, Tony's name, Don's name, all of these mentors that I got from books, right? And then I went out and I read it every day. And when I say every day, I mean more often than not. And it's real simple. God gave us 7 days in a week. So if you do something 4 days out of the week, you will do it more often than not. If you do something 3 days out of the week, you're doing it less often than not. So you go out, you write 3 to 5 bullet points in each of these domains. Who do you want to become? You write it from past tense as though somebody's reading it like a eulogy. And then you start to make choices. Your brain subconsciously starts to help you make choices to become that person. And what happens is when you define the first 4 domains, you will figure out what you need to do financially. I had a client who was like, I want to be a multimillionaire. Fantastic. We defined the first 4 domains, and he went, you know what? I actually only need about $300,000 a year to be happy. And I had another person who was like, oh, I'm good with like 500,000 a year. We defined those other domains, and he realized, you know what? I need to make like 2 or 3 million a year for this to work. So it helps you to filter out your daily decisions. It helps you to, your subconscious, as you read it, you create positive cognitive dissonance. What that means is you read it and you go, Jim will read his statement in the morning and he'll go, well, Jim's brain goes, Jim, that's not who you are. So I'm going to help you make decisions today to move you closer to that person. So when we set goals, it's not about achieving the goal. It's about becoming the person along the way who can achieve that goal. And this helps you to become that person to achieve the life that you want. And because every choice we make leads us to become. And grammaticists hate that sentence because they're like, that's not a complete sentence. I know, that's the point. Who are you becoming? Your choices lead you to become. And if you want to become successful, you need to make choices that lead you to becoming successful. What we often do is we say, I want to be successful. And then we make choices like scrolling on our phone for 10 hours a day that lead us to not be successful, to not move the needle in our business. So, to not move the needle in our family. So I'm just looking at the time here. I'm going to share this story. This is the story that had Jim crying, I think. But this is how this works, guys. Now, I can tell you about how I wrote these things down, and then I can tell you the steps I took and how it led me to become friends with all of these amazing people and hang out with them. People even like Jim. But I'm going to give you 2 stories. One is about my daughter, Ava Lee. So Ava Lee was our second daughter, 5 years after our first, and after losing 4. So she's our miracle baby. And she loved coloring on the walls when she was little. And part of my purpose statement was that I wrote that Josh never yelled in his home. Josh never disciplined from anger. That everything he did was about love, that his family felt loved, their hearts felt safe, their lives felt safe, and that they knew they were loved even when being disciplined. So I read that every day. But I came out of being a cop. So when you don't listen to a cop, he gets his big boy voice, right? He starts yelling. Uh, I came out of
Never
my
heard that
office one
before,
day,
Josh. Never heard that before.
the big boy voice. Yeah. So I come out of my studio one day after a great day, and I look down, and right there on the wall, there's Ava Lee drawn in permanent marker on the wall in crayon. And I was sucking in. I was going to huff and puff and blow her little house in. And this is how quick it works. It's going to take me a couple of minutes to describe it, but it literally happened in a nanosecond. As I was getting ready to yell, I I swear I heard a voice in my brain say, "Wait a minute, Josh. Would the 96-year-old Josh that you want to become, would he yell at her right now? Would he be angry at her or would he discipline out of love?" And and I went, "No, that's not the me." And guys, it took the wind out of my sails and it made me take a step back and look down. And what I saw in my daughter's eyes, because she knew what was coming, what I saw in my 3-year-old's eyes was fear. I don't want to be the man that she fears. I want to be the man that she runs to for protection. And I collapsed. I collapsed to my knees. I held her. I hugged her. I cried. And then, of course, gave her the, now we know we don't color on walls, right? Yeah. And she knew that I was disappointed. That's all it took. Now, did it stop her from drawing on walls? No, she still did it from time to time. Has it stopped me from yelling entirely? No, I still lose my temper from time, but it's far less, and I am becoming the man. And I can tell you, my daughters feel loved. They feel cared for. They feel nurtured. They feel safe, even in the discipline that happens in our home. Now, story number two is a few weeks ago, I got up from praying and I wrote down these words: what do I want to do? And I wrote down, I want to write books. And I didn't think about it. I just said, I want to write books. I want to speak on stages. I want high ticket consulting engagement, short term messaging consulting engagements. And I want one high ticket coaching mastermind. That's it. That's where I want my business to go. That's what I want in the next season of my life. The next day, I met a man named Martin, who's an amazing man, who then a week later introduced me to a man named Jim, who's on this call today, Jim Morris, who's going to help me write my book. And that's how fast things can happen when you write them down, when you say, this is what I want. This is who I want to become. But to get that, what I want, I have to become something. If I hadn't become who I was today, if I hadn't followed that plan, Jim would have been nice enough to be my friend, but probably would have been like, sorry, you don't have a book in you. Guys, if you want that next level, every client I work with, when I work with my marketing and messaging clients, we define, what do you want? Not just more money, not just bigger revenue, but what do you want to create here? And again, it's got to have purpose behind it. Because yeah, making money is making money. But can you put a purpose behind that? How is you making money going to impact your client? How is it going to make them better, their life better? And every business has to think through that. What are we giving them? The answer you have to answer at the end of every day is, this is what your potential clients are asking you. After working with you, what does my life look like? How is my life improved? And when you do that and you go with service earns the sale, you guys are going to grow your business. You're going to explode it. And you write it down. You create a life map, who you want to become. You start with the spiritual, then your family, then your social, then your physical, and then your financial. And I promise you, this roadmap, I've seen it work over and over. I have taken clients from 0 to 500,000, from 500,000 to 1.5 to 1.5 to 5, from 5 to 10, from 10 to 25, from 25 to 50 million. And then at that point, my skills kind of max out and I send them on to the next guy. But I'll tell you guys, it's all because I started out with this idea of what I say in my brain affects what happens in my life. What I write on paper affects what happens in my life. And who I want to become is more important than the mile markers along the way, because stay married to who you want to become, not the path. Because I'll tell you, my path has shifted a lot, but I'm still becoming who I want to become. So, Jim, that's my message for you. I hope that was worth
Let's
the time.
go. Let's go. Let's go. Throw a 10 in the chat if you enjoyed today's show and give Josh some love. I mean, this gentleman, he's so gifted and he's helping so many people. It's funny because he also was on a stage the week after we met as well. So
That's
you
right.
hit all three of those things out of the park in literally 2 weeks. I guess my question for our listeners and who's here with us this morning is, what do you want? Take some time today and think about what you actually want. Go through those 5 categories. I put them in the chat. You've heard Josh talk about them. I'd love to, hear what people want in the next week. And, as Josh was saying, think about it as your eulogy. One thing I want to leave with you before we wrap up today is we love AI. We all love AI. We all use AI. But this is important to you. And I want you to think about, if your mother or father passed away and you had to do the eulogy, would you have AI write that eulogy? Most of us probably wouldn't. This is your eulogy. This is what you want to become, what you want to build. So I'm going to push you to not use AI in this process. Spend some time in silence. Maybe if you're heading to a listing appointment or you're driving to the office, take that time in silence, turn off the radio, turn off the podcast, think about these categories, think about what you want to become, and give yourself some time to breathe and think in silence, in deep thought. Take out the notepad on your phone, voice into it if you're commuting, write it down when you pull over, when you get to the office, when you get to that appointment. But spend some time on this, because this is your future. This is your destiny. And most importantly, this is the impact that you're going to leave on the world, on the people in your community, the people on this call, the people that, heck, you might even walk by a stranger. And if you want to become someone who loves on others, you may smile when you typically wouldn't smile at someone who needs it most. I remember walking through the airport, having a really tough time, traveling a lot, speaking a lot, missing my daughter when she was 9 months old. I had back-to-back gigs, and I said, I want to love on my family. I want to love on, people. I'm out here, I'm traveling. How can I make an impact? I remember going up to Shake Shack and just smiling at the cashier after she got yelled at in the airport. And I watched her whole world change. And it came from me thinking about how I wanted to love on people and impact people in a positive way while I was on the airplane. And this woman was having a bad day. And it was that subconscious approach, because I was thinking about it. I didn't have headphones in. I wasn't reading a book. I was writing and thinking. So I want to push you to do the same. I hope everybody has a wonderful Friday, an amazing weekend ahead. I hope there's good weather, no rain, and each of us can leave the lasting impact that we wish and want as we become the person we know we can be. So thank you, Josh, for being here today. Thank you, everybody, for jumping on the call and spending time with us this morning. Please reach out to Josh. He's got some information in the chat. He's a great guy. He's probably happy to connect with each one of you. Send him that message on Facebook. Send him that DM. Shoot him an email. Check out his website. And I hope to see you all soon. Thank you again, Josh. I really appreciate you and the impact you've given us today. And I'll see y'all soon. Peace.